Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming so bright and early on this 8:30, and thank you for those who are watching along. We are so excited to have you here because in the next 40 minutes, you will be experts in making games on the Google Assistant. We're going to discuss why we are serious about play and why we think you should be too, and who is excited to play these games. And then we're going to get into tips of how, with words, pixels, sounds, and the code to make it happen. And then lastly, what you can do to be found on the Google Assistant. But before I go any further, let me introduce myself. I am Thushan. I am a product manager for fun and delight on the Google Assistant. And I'm joined by Andy. He's also fun. He's our team's creative lead. And Ralfi, who is our product manager on Dialogflow. And while he doesn't have fun in his title, I can guarantee you he's fun. We are a really big team of writers, engineers, designers, sound gurus who drive the personality and delight of the Google Assistant. This team crafts how we respond to lots of queries, like tell me a joke, to how are you doing, or a surprisingly popular one, which is, hey Google, I love you. People say that. And the reason we do this is, when you think of the Google Assistant, everyone thinks it's about getting things done, and that is absolutely true. We're here to make your life easier. But we're also here to make it a lot more fun, too. And that's our little slogan for our team. We build apps like a trivia game called Are You Feeling Lucky? And the reason we do this is so that we can learn how to make these games and make sure that those APIs that you need exist so that you can go build them. We also build templates, and we worked with BuzzFeed recently to bring them on board onto the Google Assistant, and where you can find out what dessert are you, all those fun quizzes that they have on their site, now you can play through the Google Assistant. And we also work with awesome startups like Volley, who made a game called King for a Day. That's one of the first that runs on these smart displays that you've probably seen around. And we're excited to show you those apps. For example, they run on the smart display right here, and they soon will be running on phones and TVs. And we've tried to make it easy for you. Rest assured, all those awesome Google actions that you've already built can get upgraded with ease, with technologies you're very familiar with, HTML5, to make that happen. So I'm sure many of you are like us, where when you were a kid, you wanted a talking robot. I always wanted Optimus Prime, and now we have it. It's called the Google Assistant. And that is quite an opportunity for us. This is one of my favorite charts. Each curve here is the adoption curve of new technologies over time. And as you can see, each one gets sharper and has higher adoption rates as we get closer to where we are now. And then you look at us, smart speakers. Now, while it's small right now, that curve is the sharpest of them all. People are running to these devices and adding it to their homes around the world. Now, you probably think of the Google Assistant is primarily coming through these, the Google Homes, and tons made by third parties. And that's definitely the way to think of us. But we want you to think of it as more than just those devices. The Assistant is everywhere. It's in your kitchen on those smart displays. It's in the living room on TVs. And most importantly, it's on the go. It's in millions and millions of people's pockets on their phones. And we think that's an opportunity to reach users in a variety of modes, in a variety of places. And we believe it's a new type of play. We call it conversational play. And while we feel like we're in the black and white film era of this, like we're still learning how to go build these games, we do know a couple things. When we look at who our users are, we're seeing a couple patterns of who they are. They're millennials, their families, and their kids. Perfect game players. We also want to highlight this. This is Angry Birds Rise to fame. And what's important to note is it took a while before Angry Birds became one of the seminal games on touchscreens. Smartphones were released, and it took about 2 years before Angry Birds even came out and rise. And this is where we are right now. Smart speakers have been out for a while, but there's an inflection point that we believe is going to happen, particularly around play. And we're down there, and we believe that one of you, many of you, hopefully all of you, will be on that curve coming up. So I'm going to hand this off to Andy, who will talk about building blocks of play.
All right, thank you, Thushan. So I'm Andy, and I am also officially fun. And what I would like to do is talk to you about the building blocks of great conversational gameplay. So there's going to be unique challenges that make designing conversational games very different than your console, PC, or mobile games. And so here are some of the principles that our team uses to deliver engaging experiences that users love. First, we need to create the universe. Think of some of your favorite games. What are the worlds that they transport you to? Some of my old school favorites are things like Dark Castle and Space Quest and Zelda. And there's this orchestration of elements through the backgrounds, the characters, the story, the sound. They all work together. But they often rely on visuals to bring this world to life. Now, with conversational games, we don't always have those elements to work with. So we need to look for inspiration elsewhere. And one of the places that we can look is the oral storytelling techniques that go back hundreds of years. So a simple story starting phrase like once upon a time helps set the stage in fairy tales, fables, and myths. And the origins date back past the 1400s. They're also pretty much universal. You can find equivalents in dozens of languages. So things like a long time ago or there once lived. So for us to create our universe, we need to set the stage, just like Once Upon a Time does for fairy tales. It doesn't need to be much, but it does help users understand the world they are in. So here's a quick example. If you ask the assistant, what should I be for Halloween? It's going to go through a series of questions and help you decide a silly costume that you should wear when you go trick-or-treating. So here are two approaches on how we can bring the player into the game. Let's listen to the first one.
Welcome to the Halloween costume quiz. Answer these 5 questions to find out what you should be for Halloween this year.
All right. So that technically does the job. It brings the user in a little bit. It also at least gives feedback to let users know that they've entered the right game. But I think we can do more. So now let's listen to this second option.
Wow, I'm so glad you asked. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm kind of an expert. Oh, hold on. Trick or treat! Nice costumes. Great use of burlap. Here you go.
Thank you.
Okay, run along and have fun.
Thank you.
I need to help someone now.
Bye.
Okay, let me assess your costume interests with a few questions. Are you ready?
So listen to how that second version really starts to set the stage, and more importantly, it gets users excited about playing the game. So the other thing that we really need to do is to kind of look on ways to layer in sound design. It's such a critical element, especially since we have fewer elements to work with. So we want to look at ways to kind of paint this audio world. Now, this can be done in a couple ways. One is kind of through the background, so music or atmosphere to kind of really help kind of create that whole effect. Or we can also use it as a foreground element. So maybe we want to use it as a way to give feedback to the user that they've done something right or wrong. Or we want to use it to emphasize key moments of delight or dialogue. To illustrate this point, the Google Assistant has a poem for you, our loving audience. It's titled Bike and Kickstand. So let's listen to this.
Thanks for humoring me. Just give me a few seconds to write it down. You're like a bike, and I'm like the kickstand. Lean on me, friend, when it's time to make plans. Whether you're searching for info, trying to spell chateau, looking for recipes, or other necessities, I'll always reply.
All right. So pretty good. Now let's hear it with some sound layered in.
Thanks for humoring me. Just give me a few seconds to write it down. You're like a bike, and I'm like the kickstand. Lean on me, friend, when it's time to make plans. Whether you're searching for info, trying to spell chateau, looking for recipes, or other necessities, if you have any questions, I'll always reply.
Do you feel that? It's right here. It's deep inside. It really just helps elevate everything. And so, fortunately, later on in our wonderful program, we are going to show you how to add the love into your dialogue. Now, another thing to consider is how to use sound to get users to focus. This can be especially helpful in multiplayer experiences. So in our game, Are You Feeling Lucky? Users are automatically given names. And since you can have up to 6 players at a time, we found through our research that users might forget when it's their turn to answer. So to help get users to focus, we pair them with audio cues. So let's listen to how that works.
Okay, just so everybody is straight, I'll give you your names again. They are Nibbler, Scooter, Freestyle, and Puddles.
So this can be a great way just to kind of associate that audio cue with that name, bring users back, and it's something that you guys might want to consider as you're developing games too. How can you use audio cues to get users to focus? Now, our next principle is to keep it simple. Conversations, they're inherently linear. And it's really easy to move forwards, but it's much harder to move back. We can't ask users to hold too much in their heads. So here are a few ways that you can keep things simple. The first is use a consistent structure. Familiarity is going to make people feel more comfortable. And the more we have deviations, it's going to increase the cognitive load of that player and risk to a higher level of confusion and possibly errors. So imagine this. We're in a quiz, and here are just 2 different questions, pretty similar in structure. Now we restate that question, and then we follow up with the options. So we still kind of can vary the language a little bit, but you can see the structure is very consistent. And as the player goes through the experience, they're now going to know what to expect, allowing them to focus on the content and not the game mechanics. Now, as we push the boundaries of conversational gameplay, you may want to change the structure. So maybe you want to have like a bonus round or something like that. That's going to be OK as long as you take the time and teach the users that this portion of the game is going to be different. So you're going to need to ultimately weigh, is that worth it? Is it worth it to take that time in order to kind of explain it, even though it may slow the pace down a bit? Now, another simple thing to keep in mind is when you list out the choices for a player, just make sure you follow up with the exact order. So if we look at this, would you rather travel on a tiny plane or a surfboard? We follow up with plane and then surfboard. Sometimes it's easy just to kind of switch those around, but keep it consistent. Our next principle is to keep players engaged. We don't want your games to feel like a lecture. It's very easy for players to lose focus and get distracted. One way to do this is by analyzing the player's experience over the course of the game. So some of you kind of coming from the game world may be familiar with the player interest curve, which is essentially a way to represent the highlights and the lowlights of a player's experience. And this is going to be similar to kind of creating user journey maps, if you're familiar with product design and some of that, kind of similar types of concepts. You're just simply going to watch players playing your game, and you're going to notice kind of like key milestones. Watch their reactions. Are they cringing? Are they excited? And you're going to start to plot this. Now, as you do this, you're going to generate these patterns. And as these patterns happen, you're going to want to kind of make sure that the curve is up. So looking at a graph like this, this is a little bit of a concern. You can see it starts off with a great intro, and it ends with an outcome, but the middle kind of sags a bit, and we don't want that to happen. One way to keep players engaged is to make the player part of the conversation. Your experience is going to be directed by the dialogue. So we want to make sure that we're always talking with the player and not at the player. You can do this by creating digestible chunks. You find moments for your player to participate. The other thing that we can do is respond contextually whenever possible. Craft your dialogue based on that player's response. So imagine here the player is asked if they would rather play with a unicorn or a dragon. And here we have a very generic response. So this could be something for any of the questions. However, in this example, we are able to respond to something that's not only a bit more delightful, but it also makes the game feel smarter. It's providing simple feedback to the user that the game understands what they said. Now, as we move to kind of more visual experiences, smart displays, what we're going to want to do is avoid transcribing word for word all of the dialogue. So Thushan mentioned before the BuzzFeed quiz, and so here's kind of an example. On the right here, we see this is the TTS. So this is what the output would be. On the left is more of the experience itself. So you can see we're not just kind of using the screen just to kind of throw all that text in. We want to simplify it. We want to move the user forward. We want to use the screen to create that universe. We also want to just make sure there's opportunities to kind of increase the brand and create more of an emotional connection with the user. So don't transcribe your text word for word. Another way to keep players engaged is to have a great payoff. Our users' time is very valuable, and there's a lot of competition for it. So we need to make sure that we reward them for getting to the end. So if you remember that interest curve that I was showing you before, it ended on that high note. You guys, as game designers, are going to need to figure out what that payoff is going to be. All right, our last principle is to always be playtesting. Now, in the game industry, this is nothing new. We know that it's going to help increase quality. We know it's going to help find bugs and basic design flaws. We also know that engagement is going to drop off if the game feels broken. And we should expect that errors are going to happen. Especially with conversational games, we know that players can respond with anything. The environment may be polluted, just kind of full of background noise. We definitely got a bit of that as we were kind of in the sandbox, and you can kind of hear all the people around. You know, there's just going to be situations like that if you're at a party where it might be tough, so we have to anticipate some of that. We also know that players may forget what to do next. A few common errors that we see are going to be things like no input errors, where the assistant just hasn't detected a response at all. We also see things like no match errors, where maybe the assistant can't understand the reply. And we also get false accept errors. So this might be where the assistant misunderstands the user, but just kind of moves along anyway. So here's a few things that we can do to minimize those errors and maximize the fun. One, start with your concept. And you can do this in a very lo-fi way. So have a user's players read a script of kind of the happy path, or essentially the ideal path of the gameplay. You need to make sure that the gameplay is actually fun. If the happy path isn't happy, then it might be time to look at ways to iterate on it. Another thing we do is we like to test with our eyes closed. So these are conversational games, and you start by designing with voice only. You can do this with a working prototype, so something like dialogue flow, or you can also do this as like a Wizard of Oz technique, where a team member maybe simulate the response of the system, and you kind of have it set up in this controlled environment. This is a great way to help test the content, the pacing, and the complexity of your game mechanics. Now, the last suggestion here is to test with a range of audiences, not just your primary demographic. So watch your parents play with it. Watch your kids play with it. You know, they may bubble up issues with comprehension and complexity of your dialogue. They may kind of discover that some words are just hard to say. So to wrap up really quick, some of the basic building blocks that our team uses are create the universe, keep it simple, keep users engaged, and constantly playtest. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ralfi.
Hello, everyone. This is Ralfi, who is also fun, from Dialogflow team. Now that you are equipped with the expert tips from Andy, let's dive into how we can actually implement all of this. The good news is, starting is really simple. We are working really hard on developing tools and capabilities to make it easier for you to focus on what you do the best, developing games. At a high level, developing actions for Google has 3 main components. This applies to any kind of actions, games or non-games. The first step is you need to build your conversational flows. Then you need to connect your conversational flow to your game logic. And lastly, you need to publish your actions to Google Assistant. For the rest of this talk, I'm going to focus on Dialogflow, our industry-leading conversational agent platform, creation platform, and Actions on Google Console, which is the tool that you publish your actions to Google Assistant. Dialogflow is a tool that makes it super easy to build conversational flows. It extracts meaning from dialogues, applying machine learning to the training examples that you provide. Let me show you how this works. Imagine you said the following sentence. Send 3 dragons to England immediately. Attack with green flames for 5 hours. Dialogflow understands that this is about game turn. It's not about user asking for help or trying to exit the game. It's about game turn. It also identifies important concepts within this piece of dialogue. It understands common concepts like numbers, countries, colors. It can also extract specific concepts about your game, like characters and weapons. It's smart enough to understand some more complex concepts like time, which is relative. In this example, when you say 5 hours, it resolves it from the time that the sentence was uttered to 5 hours later. Another cool thing about Dialogflow is it comes with built-in internationalization support. With just a few clicks, you can replicate the same conversational flow in another language. If you want to learn more about Dialogflow, you can attend a dedicated session on it at 3:30 on stage 2. Now that you build your actions, it's time to test. Up until now, you could only test your actions using your own developer account on devices that are associated with that particular developer account. We've just released a new feature that allows you to share your actions with a set of alpha or beta users. The alpha release is really good for testing in design and development phase. There are no policy reviews, and that's the quickest way to get to your testers and get feedback and iterate. The beta release is for games that are ready to launch. It goes through full review process. The goal here is to find edge cases, bugs, and issues with final polish. Ultimately, we want you to produce the best game possible. After you build, test, and publish, you are effectively part of the Google ecosystem. So you should make the most out of that. The easiest way to do that is account linking. It allows your users to use their own Google accounts to play your games, or they can link their Google account to your account management system. To set up account linking, simply just go to the account linking view on Actions console. There, you can define what permissions you plan to ask from the user. These permissions are defined as scopes. For example, you can ask for access to users' contacts, calendar, photos, or other Google services they might be using. From a user's perspective, they'll go through this familiar Google sign-in flow to use their own Google account or link the Google account to their gaming account. Creating this experience as a developer is fairly simple. You just write literally 2 lines of code and use our sign-in helper function to request sign-in. Once you do that, you need to handle user's response. If the user goes through the authentication flow successfully, you'll receive an access token, which you can use to access the resources that you asked permission for. If something goes wrong, you just need to acknowledge it and gracefully exit. One of the key differentiators of Google Assistant is the fact that it's available in various modalities and enables different interaction types. Actions on Google APIs give you full control on how to manage these different interaction types. Let me quickly go over what I mean by these different interaction types. The first one is what we call voice only. You can think of your smart speakers. The whole interaction is voice-based, input and output. The next interaction type is called voice forward. These are the smart speakers you've seen in the sandbox area. Here, again, the primary mode of interaction is voice, but it's enhanced with visuals when necessary. The third interaction model is intermodal. You can think of your phone. Here, you have conversation and visuals intermixed. You can start with a conversation, switch to a visual, and go back and forth. And the last one is visual only. You can think of your phone on mute as an example. Here, there is no audio input or output. It's all about visuals and text. So let's go through an example. Let's say that a user is playing your game on a smart speaker, and then you want to show them the image of their new monster evolved. Right? We define the image here. The first thing we need to do is we need to check if the device the player is playing your game on has the capability to show an image. This capability is defined as screen output. If the device has this capability, great, we just show the image. But in our example, the player is playing on a smart speaker, which doesn't have that capability. So what we do is we ask the user to switch to a device that has this capability. We do that with a helper function called newSurface. We define what capability we are looking for, in this case, screen output. We give the context to the user on the smart speaker they are interacting with. To see your evolved monster, go to your phone. And then we send a notification to the device that we want to get the user to. In this example, we say, see how your monster has evolved. And then they can tap to this notification and continue their interaction on their phone. The final step as a developer to manage this flow is you need to handle the response of the user for our new surface prompt. If the user accepts the prompt, moves to this new capable device, then you simply show the image. If they don't, you just need to gracefully exit and acknowledge that you won't be able to show the image. Once your game action starts getting traction, you need to think about re-engagement. And we have multiple ways in our platform to help you re-engage with your users. We literally have a section called user engagement on our Actions console. There, you can opt into push notifications, routines, and daily update suggestions. If you opt into push notifications, you will be allowed to send notifications to your users. Obviously, the users need to provide consent. This is a really powerful tool, so it needs to be used thoughtfully and sparingly. You can think of routines as actions chained together. For example, we have something like I'm home routine, where you can bundle a bunch of apps you want to trigger. And if you say, hey, Google, I'm home, you might have Google turn on the lights, adjust the thermostat, tell you a joke maybe, and start your favorite playlist. Daily updates is also similar. You set up a daily notification that reoccurs every day at a set time. The user experience for daily routines and daily updates and routines is after your users engage with your app and exit, they'll see a suggestion ship prompting them to add your action to daily updates or routines. Routines may not be that suitable for gaming vertical, but something to think about. I'm just going to focus on daily updates for now. This is what you'll see. This is what your users will see if you opt into daily updates. After the user ends their interaction, there will be a chip which says, do you want me to send, in this case, jokes daily? And if the user opts in, Google will guide the user through setting the time of the day when they want to receive the daily update. From this point on, as a developer, you need to do two things. First, you need to handle user's response to the daily update flow. If the user goes through the flow successfully, you need to acknowledge that. If not, again, you need to gracefully exit. The second step is you need to define what you actually want to do when the daily trigger arrives. Here, we set to trigger the update intent. In the best dad jokes example, the update intent would just send a new joke. Ultimately, this is what your users will see. Lastly, I'd like to talk about monetization options for your game. We've just announced our digital goods API here at I/O that allows you to directly sell digital entitlements using Google Play infrastructure. This builds upon our earlier launch this year, where you could use your existing Play entitlements with assistant actions. For example, if you bought an audiobook or purchased a monster in your game, you could actually use it in your Google Assistant. What Digital Goose API does is it makes the reverse also true. If you have a transaction in your action, the same entitlement can be used in your Android app. Let me go through an example from our partners in Headspace to show you how this could work on a smart display. For those of you who don't know about Headspace, they're a company who build products on guided meditation. So let's say that a session is over, and Headspace offers the option to subscribe. The user responds with an intent to subscribe. And the action shows the available options in a very curated and visual way. User picks an option and is handed over to the checkout flow. Here, if you've enabled account linking and the user already has account credentials stored with Google, the checkout will be very seamless. You just, with a single tap or a command, you'll have your premium content that can be reused on the Assistant and also on Android apps. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Thushan, who's going to talk about implementing sound best practices in your games.
So now we're going to pump it up. If you remember back when Andy was talking, we showed the difference of what sound design can do. These devices really rely on music, sound effects, and voice. And we have some technology that we wanted to showcase that can help you pump it up quite a bit. You could, for example, record tons and tons of lines with a voice actor and get a sound engineer to add sound effects and make some beautiful audio. Or you could use this technology called SSML, which is Speech Synthesis Markup Language, that allows you to do it in real time in code. And what that also allows you to do is to put variables along the way. Now, we have this static poem, but imagine if it said, "Thank you for humoring me, Thushan." You could add personalization to it and yet still have that dynamic sound effects and all. So here's our script, and we're going to start pumping it up. SSML is just like HTML. You just add tags. You wrap it in a speak tag. You put paragraph tags when you have each line. And then you can start doing things like adding sound effects. And it's a simple audio URL from your server. But there's more than just text and sound effects. There's sound layering. And that's what we're going to talk about here. We have a tag called media. What media does is allow you to essentially make two or multiple tracks and then layer them together. This is our first track here, and we're going to call it poem. And it's going to start 1 second in. And you'll see why in a second. We add another sound effect, and we even put a little dramatic pause. And then we work on our music loop. We call it music. We can control how many times it loops through. Set the sound level if we want it to fade in or fade out. And then we use that name from earlier. When the poem ends, let's run it for another second. And then we have our music loop itself. So altogether, we wrap it in another tag called parallel, or par, and that runs both of those tracks together. Now, what I showed you here is a truncated version of that poem, but let's hear that example.
Thanks for humoring me. Just give me a few seconds to write it down.
Sound effects.
You're like a bike, and I'm like the kickstand.
We got the music. We got
Lean
that
on
sound
me,
effect.
friend, when it's time to make plans. Whether you're searching for info, trying to spell chateau, looking for recipes, or other necessities, if you have any questions, I'll always reply.
And that fade out. And it's all done in code. The other big thing we want to leave you with is if you make something and no one hears it, not only is that a punch in the gut, but what you're wondering what you can do to make that happen. So we want to tell you that very, very soon, we're going to be opening up Hey Google, let's play a game to all developers. This is called a built-in intent. There are other talks about it, but register your app for it. Consider it the app store of games on the Google Assistant. And when someone says, play a game, which is what a lot of our users are doing, they'll get a list of the games available. And this works on both smart displays, phones, and smart speakers. But to make that happen, we have a little homework for you. Go back into your actions on Google Console and fill out all the metadata. That's what we use to look at your app, know what it's about, and feature it with users. So make sure you have beautiful icons and your descriptions are great there. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. We don't usually talk about how we rank things, but I want to highlight this. This is how we look for quality. Straight up quality, be it sounds great, the gameplay is great, and users are loving it and rating it. We're looking for long sessions and games that have people coming back for more and more. We're looking for games that map to those core demographics of millennials, families, and kids. And we're looking for games that aren't like the others around there. We want to offer our users a wide variety of games. And then if you can update your apps regularly and feature the new tech, like jumping onto those smart displays, that will give you a great shot of getting in front of users. So we want to leave you with one last note. I think many of you have been on the touchscreen revolution of making apps. And we think there's an opportunity very similar here with these smart speakers and digital assistants. And on behalf of the Dialogflow, the Actions on Google team, Assistant, we know that it's hard, but we're here for you. We want to see you succeed. And we would love to hear from you. I'm going to show you our email addresses later, but we think there's an opportunity to become the household name of conversation and play and games. And we want it to be you, all of you. Thank you so much. Please leave us feedback and take a snapshot of our email addresses. We would love to hear from you, be it new tech or questions about how to use it, and apps that you're making. We'd love to play with them. Thanks so much, and we can't wait to play your games.